I stood there, breath heavy and heart racing, feeling every eye on me. My grandkids were laughing, but not with me. "Grandma, you're too slow," one of them teased, the words stinging more than I expected. I'd always been the fun one, the grandma who baked cookies, stayed up late watching cartoons, and never said no to a second helping of ice cream. But today, something had changed. It wasn't just their teasing, it was the way they looked at me, like I didn't belong in their world anymore. I wanted nothing more than to be close to them, especially after my husband passed away. So I packed up my life, left my old home in New Orleans, and moved to Baton Rouge just to be near them. I gave up my garden, my friends, and the routines I loved, all for them. But despite all that, they saw me as slow, outdated, and old. That hurt more than any words. So when they challenged me to a race, I didn't hesitate, because sometimes love means proving them wrong in the most unexpected way. But what started as a gesture of love turned into something far more disturbing. But before I continue, just a quick note, I realized something surprising the other day. Over 98% of people who watch these stories aren't subscribed. If you're one of them, thank you for being here, and if you're enjoying this, I'd be so grateful if you hit that subscribe button. It's free, and it helps me keep sharing real stories that matter. Anyway, back to what happened next. My name is Evelyn, and I'm a grandmother in my early 70s. I've always been a woman full of life, the kind of person who believes that every day holds a new chance to learn something, to laugh a little louder, or to make a fresh start. Growing up in a small town outside New Orleans, I was raised by my parents, who taught me the value of hard work, kindness, and family. Those lessons stuck with me throughout my life. I married young to a man named Henry, who was the love of my life. We built a life together filled with love, laughter, and a few hardships. Like everyone else, we had 2 children, and eventually, those children gave us 5 grandchildren, the brightest lights in my world. Henry was my rock. When he passed away 5 years ago, I felt like my world cracked open, and I was left with a hole no one could fill. After his death, the house that held so many memories began to feel too quiet, too empty. The garden where Henry used to spend his mornings was overgrown, and the walls echoed with silence. I realized that holding on to that place was holding me back from the only thing that really mattered: my family, my grandchildren. So, with a mix of sadness and hope, I made the decision to leave New Orleans behind and move to Baton Rouge, where my daughter and her family lived. It wasn't easy. I left the home Henry and I built from scratch, my friends, the streets I had walked for decades, and even my little routines that had comforted me through tough times. But I was determined. I wanted to be close to my grandkids, to be a part of their lives. Every day I wanted them to know me, not just as the old grandma who sends cards on holidays, but as someone they could laugh with, play with, and trust. Living with my daughter Carla and her family was an adjustment. Carla was a kind woman, but she was busy between her job and raising 3 kids. The house was always full of noise and chaos. My grandkids, Jacob, Emily, and little Sophie, were lively, full of energy, and always on the move. Jacob was 12, the oldest, and a bit of a jokester. He loved teasing me, especially about how slow I was at keeping up with their games. Emily, 9, was the peacemaker, sweet but shy, often caught between her big brother's jokes and Sophie's endless curiosity. Sophie, the youngest at 5, was a whirlwind of energy, always climbing or running somewhere. Despite their energy, I loved them all fiercely. I tried to keep up, baking cookies, helping with homework, and joining their games when I could. But sometimes, the reality was hard to ignore. The kids had grown up in a fast-paced world full of technology and new trends, while I was still learning to use my smartphone and struggling to keep up with their slang. I often felt out of place, like I was trying too hard to fit in. The teasing wasn't mean-spirited, but it cut deeper than they realized. It made me wonder if they really saw me as part of their world or just someone old and slow who belonged in the past. Still, I held on to hope. I believed that with time, patience, and love, I could bridge the gap between us. That's why when Jacob dared me to race him and his siblings in the park one afternoon, I didn't hesitate to say yes. I wanted to show them I wasn't just their grandma, I was someone they could admire, someone who could surprise them. What I didn't realize was how much that moment would change everything. At first, everything seemed normal. Life in Baton Rouge was busy but comforting. The kids laughed, the house buzzed with energy, and Carla kept things running smoothly. But as weeks passed, I started noticing little things, tiny cracks in the picture-perfect family life that made my skin crawl just a little. It began with the way Jacob looked at me sometimes, not the teasing smile, but something colder, sharper. I caught his eyes lingering on me a moment too long before he quickly looked away. It was like he was hiding something or maybe even keeping secrets from me. Then there were the conversations that didn't quite add up. I'd overhear Carla on the phone, her voice low and hurried. When I asked about it, she'd brush me off with a quick, "Oh, just work stuff. Grandma, nothing to worry about." But her eyes darted around nervously, and I could tell there was more to it. One evening, I tried to open the door to the spare room where Carla kept some of her things, but it was locked. When I asked her about it, she smiled tightly and said, "That's just where I keep my important stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." The smile didn't reach her eyes, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the locked door was a barrier, not just physical, but between us. Little things piled up, the way Emily would suddenly change the subject whenever I asked about school, how Sophie's favorite toys sometimes disappeared only to show up weeks later in places they shouldn't be. Even the way the dog, usually friendly, would growl quietly when I came near certain rooms. Most nights, I lay awake wondering if I was imagining things. Maybe it was just the grief talking, twisting normal family quirks into something sinister. But deep inside, something told me otherwise. There was a tension in the air, like a quiet storm waiting to break, and I was standing in the middle of it, unsure if I should run or face whatever was coming. Every time I caught a strange glance or heard hushed voices, my heart jumped. Was I being paranoid, or was something really wrong in this house I'd come to call home? The fear of the unknown gnawed at me, but I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't ignore these signs forever. If I wanted to protect my family and myself, I had to find out the truth, even if it scared me. The feeling of unease that had been simmering inside me finally boiled over. One afternoon, I was cleaning the spare room, the one Carla always locked, when I noticed something odd about the heavy curtain covering the small window near the ceiling. It was slightly askew, as if someone had hurriedly pushed it aside. Curious and feeling braver than I had in weeks, I pulled the curtain back, and my heart nearly stopped. Behind it, mounted discreetly in the corner, was a small camera, just a tiny black lens barely bigger than a coin, but enough to pierce through the illusion of safety I'd been clinging to. I blinked, trying to convince myself it was some mistake, maybe a security camera for the house. But why would Carla hide it behind a curtain, and why in a room she never let me enter? That discovery was just the beginning. I sat down trembling and began to piece everything together. The cold looks, the locked door, the strange phone calls. My mind raced as I quietly searched the room for more clues. Under the desk, I found a small USB drive taped underneath, marked only with a date. Back in my room, heart pounding, I plugged it into my laptop. The files that appeared were chilling, videos, hours of footage showing me in the house, sometimes just sitting quietly, sometimes interacting with the kids. There were clips from the kitchen, the living room, even the park where we played together. It felt like someone had been watching my every move. I closed the laptop, the room spinning around me. Why? Why would Carla spy on me? Was it her or someone else? The betrayal cut deep. This was supposed to be my home, my safe space. Instead, it had become a cage of surveillance and suspicion. But there was more. As I flipped through the videos, one file caught my eye, a clip of a conversation between Carla and Jacob. I played it, heart racing. Grandma's getting suspicious. As Carla said in a low voice, we need to keep an eye on her. Don't let her find out about the real plan. Jacob's laughter sent chills down my spine. She'll never know. She's too slow to catch on. That last phrase hit me like a punch to the gut. Slow, outdated, not part of the family anymore. And here I was, being watched like a stranger in my own home. I felt the room close in on me, anger, fear, and confusion swirling together. How long had this been going on? What was the real plan, and why was I the target? Determined to uncover the truth, I started looking for more evidence in Carla's closet. Behind some boxes, I found a stack of papers, documents I wasn't meant to see. They were plans to sell the family home, letters from lawyers, and notes about moving Carla's kids far away. It was as if my place in this family was being erased step by step. Tears blurred my vision. The family I'd sacrificed so much for was turning their backs on me. But through the shock, a spark of determination grew. I wasn't going to be a victim anymore. I took a deep breath and decided then and there to fight back, to reclaim my place and prove that being too slow was the last thing I was. The shock of the discovery hit me harder than I ever imagined possible. I spent that night staring at the ceiling, heart heavy and mind racing. How could the people I loved most, the family I moved across the state for, betray me like this? The house, once a place of comfort, now felt like a trap. Every creak in the floor, every whisper of voices down the hall reminded me I was being watched. The warmth I'd hoped for had turned cold and distant. Tears came and went. Anger simmered beneath the surface. In the quiet moments, fear whispered, "What if I'm truly alone in this?" But amidst the pain, a voice inside me grew louder, a voice that said, "I am not helpless. I am not slow. I am stronger than this." The next morning, I began my own quiet investigation. I returned to that locked spare room, carefully searching for anything I had missed. I found more hidden cameras, small, well-hidden devices that covered the entire house, even outside in the backyard. I took photos with my phone, trying not to raise suspicion. Back in my room, I started going through the files on the USB drive again, this time with more focus. There were logs, recordings, even coded messages that seemed to hint at a larger plan. I didn't understand all of it, but one thing was clear. This was more than just spying. It was control. I remembered a conversation I overheard once between Carla and a lawyer friend about power of attorney and estate planning. Could it be that they were trying to take control of everything, my home, my finances, even my future? Determined to protect myself, I searched through my paperwork looking for anything that Carla or anyone else might have signed in my name. My hands shook as I rifled through drawers and folders, but I refused to give up. Then I found it, a document with my signature granting. I didn't remember signing the power of attorney to Carla. The date was recent, just a few weeks before the cameras appeared. My heart sank. Had I been tricked? I knew I needed help, but who could I trust? I called my old friend Diane, who lived nearby. Diane had always been my rock, someone who knew me long before I became slow grandma. I explained everything, my voice breaking at times. She listened quietly, then promised to come over the next day. With Diane's help, I reached out to a local attorney who specialized in elder law and family disputes. The lawyer was kind but firm, explaining that there were ways to contest any forged or coerced documents, and that I could take steps to secure my rights and my home. It was the first time since this nightmare began that I felt a flicker of hope. I started making a plan, one that would not just expose the betrayal but also protect what was mine. I would gather evidence, document everything, and confront the people I once trusted. This wasn't just about winning a battle. It was about reclaiming my dignity, and I was ready. The day of the confrontation arrived with a mix of dread and determination. I woke up early, heart pounding like a drum, but this time it wasn't fear, it was resolve. I was done being the quiet victim. It was time to face the family I had trusted and show them I was stronger than they thought. I gathered all the evidence I had, the hidden camera footage, photos of the devices, copies of the forged documents, and the recordings of Carla and Jacob plotting behind my back. Each piece was a shard of truth that would shatter the lies. I asked Diane to come with me for support, and together we went to Carla's house. When I stepped inside, the house felt different, tense, heavy with unspoken words. Carla was there, looking surprised but quickly masking it with a forced smile. Jacob, Emily, and Sophie were nearby, sensing the seriousness in the air but unsure what was about to happen. I took a deep breath and began. "Carla, I have something to show you." I handed her my phone, loaded with the videos and photos. Her eyes flickered over them, and for a moment, I thought she would deny everything. But as she watched the footage of the cameras and heard her own voice plotting, the color drained from her face. Jacob shifted uncomfortably, avoiding my gaze. I pressed on, pulling out the documents I had found, the power of attorney papers signed with my name, but under suspicious circumstances. "Do you want to explain this?" I asked, my voice steady but firm. Carla's shoulders slumped. The fight drained from her eyes. "Evelyn, it's not what you think," she said, her voice trembling. "We were scared. Things have been hard, and we thought we were protecting you." "Protecting me?" I echoed, disbelief thick in my throat. "By spying on me? Planning to sell my home without telling me? Treating me like I'm a child?" Emily stepped forward, tears in her eyes. "Grandma, we didn't mean to hurt you. We just thought you were slowing down, and we didn't want you to get hurt." The raw honesty in her voice broke something inside me. I wanted to yell, to scream, but instead, I took a deep breath. "I'm not slow," I said quietly but with power. "And I'm not someone you can push aside. This family belongs to me just as much as it belongs to you." There was a long silence as everyone absorbed my words. Then, with Diane's support and the lawyer's advice fresh in my mind, I laid out the next steps, legally protecting my rights, securing my home, and rebuilding trust, but only if it was earned. The power in the room shifted. I wasn't just the too slow grandma anymore. I was the one in control. From that moment, everything changed. After the confrontation, I knew I couldn't stay in that house, not anymore. The walls held too many memories, now twisted by betrayal, and every corner whispered reminders of what had been done to me. It was time to leave, time to take back control of my life on my own terms. Packing my things felt strangely empowering. I wasn't just gathering clothes and keepsakes. I was reclaiming pieces of myself that had been lost in the confusion and hurt. The photos of my late husband, the letters from friends, even the faded quilt my mother had sewn, all of it was a testament to who I was beyond the labels they tried to give me. With Diane's help, I found a small apartment nearby. It was cozy and quiet, nothing like the chaos I left behind, but it was mine. For the first time in months, I felt a flicker of peace. Setting boundaries was harder than I expected. Calls and messages came in from Carla and the kids, some apologetic, some defensive, others just silent. I didn't answer most of them. I needed space to heal, and I wasn't willing to let old wounds reopen before I was ready. I also moved forward with the legal steps. My lawyer filed the necessary papers to revoke the power of attorney and challenge the forged documents. It wasn't easy. It felt like reliving the betrayal all over again, but it was necessary. It was part of drawing a line in the sand. There were moments when the weight of it all hit me hard. I cried alone in my apartment, missing the family I once believed in, but I also laughed quietly, sometimes unexpectedly, at the absurdity of being called too slow when I had just outsmarted them all. One afternoon, while watering the small plants I'd placed by the window, I realized something. I was no longer defined by their doubts or their cruelty. I was defined by my resilience, my strength. This wasn't just an ending, it was a new beginning. And as I looked out at the Louisiana sunset, I smiled because I knew finally I was free. The first morning in my new apartment felt like waking up for the very first time. The air was soft and warm, sunlight spilling gently through the windows and casting golden patches across the hardwood floor. It wasn't a grand place, just a small cozy space, but to me, it was a sanctuary, a canvas where I could paint my life. A new dawn had arrived. Gone were the cold, tense walls of the old house, the locked doors, and the hidden cameras watching my every move. Here, there was only light and quiet, broken by the gentle hum of life outside, birds singing, the distant laughter of children playing in the park, and the rustling of leaves in the soft Louisiana breeze. I made a ritual out of small things, brewing my morning coffee and savoring the rich aroma, opening the window wide to let in the fresh air, and tending to the little garden of potted plants I carefully nurtured. Each day I added something new, a colorful throw pillow, a painting from the local market, or a favorite book I hadn't touched in years. Slowly, I began to rebuild not just a home, but myself. Without the weight of betrayal clouding my mind, I found space to breathe, to dream, and to reconnect with the parts of me I'd lost. I took long walks by the river, watching the sunlight dance on the water, feeling the gentle breeze brush against my face. I reconnected with old friends I hadn't spoken to in years and made new ones who saw me for who I truly was, not the slow grandma they'd whispered about, but a woman full of life and spirit. Evenings were the best. I would sit by the window with a cup of tea, listening to jazz softly playing on the radio, letting the music fill the quiet corners of my heart. Sometimes I would laugh to myself, remembering how they thought I couldn't keep up, how I had outsmarted their plans. The humor was a balm, a reminder that I was still here, still fighting, and still winning. Each day was a step forward, a piece of the old me woven into the new fabric of my life. The loneliness that once shadowed me began to lift, replaced by a quiet confidence and peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And in that simple truth, I found my greatest victory. Looking back on everything I've been through, I realize how complicated love can be. Sometimes, the ones who claim to love us the most are the very people who try to control us, who doubt our strength, and who forget to see us for who we truly are. I never imagined my own family would betray me or that I'd have to fight so hard just to keep my dignity in my home. But through that pain, I found something precious: freedom. The kind of freedom that comes not from escaping a place, but from reclaiming yourself. Freedom to live on your own terms, freedom to say no, freedom to rise above fear and doubt. And that freedom, once taken back, is the most beautiful kind of peace I've ever known. I hope my story reminds you that no matter how slow the world thinks you are or how small your voice feels, your strength is real, your worth is undeniable, and you have the power to stand up and take control of your own life. If you ever find yourself in a situation where trust is broken or where you feel watched or controlled, remember this: you are not alone, and there is always a way out. Sometimes, in the quiet moments of courage. Rage sometimes with the help of those who truly care. Before I go, I want to ask you something. Because stories like mine don't just happen in Louisiana, they happen everywhere. If you discovered someone was watching your every move, what would you do? Share your thoughts below. I'd love to hear your story. Thank you for listening. Remember, your life is yours to live boldly, freely, and with all the strength you have.